everyone. We're really excited to be here today, and we're really grateful for this opportunity to be able to present our product to you. So our product is called Smart Stop, and it's an intelligent stop sign system. And the purpose of our presentation today is to seek technical support and also guidance so that we can further develop our project. So before we get started on the presentation, I'd like to introduce who we are as an organization. My name is Chenha Han, and I'm a grade 10 student at the Bishop Strachan School. And I'm one of the founders for OneAI, which is a student-led nonprofit organization based in the GTA. And our mission is to empower youth worldwide by providing them with accessible AI resources. And so SmartStop is one of the projects that we're working on as an organization.
Yeah, hi, my name is Daniel Ding. I go to Upper Canada College, and I'm in grade 11.
My name is Alex. I go to Crescent School, and I'm in grade 9.
Hello, my name is Jack. I also go to Crescent, and I am also in grade 9.
I'm Philip. I also go to Crescent School, and I am also in grade 9.
Alright, yeah, so before we start, let's give a quick outline about what we're going to talk about today. Just starting off, we're going to list what our motivation for this project is. Why do we want to solve this issue? And then moving on, we'll then talk about the existing solutions to crosswalks and the challenges that they have and why we need to solve those. And then we're going to talk about our solution, Smart Stop, why it's better, and we'll go into some of the technical details of how it works as well. And then we'll move on to the next steps, how you want to develop the product into the future and how you want to make it better. So starting off with just the motivation, essentially pedestrians is obviously the ones who are most vulnerable in any kind of traffic situation since they're not protected by their vehicle. And just looking at the statistics, you can see that from 2018 to 2020, more than 300 pedestrian fatalities occur every single year in Canada on average. And that's a pretty high number. And on top of that, in 2023, Ontario preliminary data also indicates that almost 4,000 pedestrians are involved in collisions. And 96 of those are fatalities, which I think is a pretty high number, and that really much just shows how much of a problem this is and we would need to tackle.
And now we're going to move on to some of the existing solutions that we see in the world today. The first one is your classic crossing guard. It helps school children to cross the road safely. Now, why are crossing guards ineffective? Well, say we're in like a place where there's a two-lane crosswalk in the intersection, right? The crossing guards, they're only able to monitor one crosswalk effectively, which leaves the pedestrians on the other one vulnerable to injuries, maybe fatalities. And the next one, there's actually 3 parts in this one: flashing lights, pavement marking signs, and pedestrian push buttons. And why are all of these ineffective? Flashing lights, we don't see that too much in Toronto, right? They can be confusing, they can be daunting, and yeah. Pavement marking signs as well as pedestrian push buttons, they are ineffective because, first of all, pavement marking signs, they can be washed and faded due to precipitation and erosion, and we don't really see them like, as a driver. And as well for pedestrian push buttons, they don't work really too well because we still see jaywalkers in Toronto just crossing without pushing a button. It can be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, so now we're just going to talk about the existing challenges that we have. And essentially, it's just because there are just more intersections than we have crossing guards, right? So there are 879 dedicated well-trained crossing guards in all of Toronto, and there are about 583 schools with around 1,200 intersections to go around each. So you can very much tell that there are not enough crossing guards. And that is a pretty big problem, as illustrated by Alex earlier. And on top of that, he also mentioned that in like a 4-way intersection scenario, there's only really, if you employ only one crossing guard, they can only really effectively guard one crosswalk at a time, and that'll leave all of 3 other ones completely vulnerable to any other dangers. And on top of that, crossing guards themselves are also putting themselves into danger every time they go to their job. So there's a lot of safety risks that come from that as well. And then obviously at the end, drivers also don't always respect traditional stop signs either. And so just to make sure that this is actually an issue that we need to tackle in our community, we put out a little survey to around 100 people, mostly targeted at teachers and parents, and asked them about safety and other general questions. And what we found is that on average, the majority of people believe that their children aren't very safe in many situations while crossing the street. On top of that, they also feel that the current pedestrian crossing system that we have is not effective enough for them to feel comfortable of their children walking around freely. And then on top of that, they also feel like there aren't enough crossing guards, as we outlined earlier, which very much just proves our point that this needs to be a problem.
now enough about statistics and surveys. Let's move on to what our product actually is. So SmartStop is an AI-enabled, solar-powered, and wirelessly connected system designed to enhance pedestrian safety. And in this product, there are three main components: the AI-driven pedestrian protection system, the traffic signaling system, and the interconnected system.
So first I'll start off by introducing the AI-driven pedestrian detection system. And so here we use advanced computer vision algorithms that are able to detect pedestrians crossing the road in real time. And so these models analyze videos that are captured by the cameras, which will be integrated into the stop sign units. We've explored a couple of deep learning models for object detection, including the YOLO series, Detectron 2, SSD, and also a faster RCNN. And we concluded that YOLO would be the best fit for our product. So as you can see on the bottom right, we have a clip from YOLO's official website of it being used at an intersection. And it's able to detect both vehicles, pedestrians, and also traffic signs. This is extremely important as it's able to process images in real time so that it can react accordingly when it sees pedestrians. And so we also ran some tests ourselves using this model with the object detection results shown on the top right. And so here you can see that it's able to detect a person, the plant behind me, and also a chair. And so for each object that it detects, it has a label as well as how confident the model is in its detection. So for example, for me, I'm labeled as a person, and it has a really high confidence of 0.96%. And so these models will be run on edge devices, which are solar powered for improved sustainability. So after doing further research into the YOLO models, we found that there's actually a wide variety of versions, ranging from 6 all the way to 10. And so here, we've selected the YOLO V10 model, which is highlighted in red on the two graphs. So on the graph on the left, it shows the latency of the model when used on the COCO dataset. And you can see that the red line shows the V10 model, and it has the lowest latency, meaning it will respond the quickest. And on the right, we have an image that shows the number of parameters used. And so V10 uses the least number of parameters, which means it is less complex compared to the other versions of the model. This is important as we're only running these models on a small edge device, which has very limited computing power. And so there are also different variants of the V10 model, which range from N representing nano all the way to X, which represents extra large. They all have the same input size, but because of their different complexity, they will have different precision. So for example, the extra large model has the highest precision, but it also has the most complexity and the highest latency. We haven't selected an exact model of V10 to use yet, as previously the experiment I ran was using the medium model, but that was on my computer, so it may have different results when used on a smaller edge device.
Yeah, this is essentially how the entire system works. They're all connected together in this diagram, as you can tell, and there's one at the bottom left right there, and that is the main SmartStop unit. And that is what houses the edge device as well as the camera that is able to see the entire intersection, all 4 crosswalks as outlined by the green dotted lines, which is the field of view of the camera. And basically what this is able to do, based off the YOLO model that she talked about earlier, is able to detect the pedestrians at each of the crosswalks, send that signal back to itself, and then also communicate to the chips at the other 4 corners of the intersection, which then in turn communicate with the signals at each of the crosswalks, thus indicating every single one of the drivers exactly which routes are open and where pedestrians are at all times.
And now, in addition to this interconnected system, there's another one called the traffic signaling system. Now, in the traffic signaling system, we'll have dynamic LED indicators that shows where a driver can go through and where a driver cannot, as well as including in these LEDs, there will be high intensity LEDs that will assure visibility in all types of lighting conditions, whether it's broad daylight or midnight.
So now I will introduce some scenarios of how SmartStop is used in real intersections. So here we're starting off with one pedestrian, and as Alex previously mentioned, we have arrows on top of the stop signs that indicate where the cars cannot go. So you can see here that we have one pedestrian crossing on the left side, And that means that the car coming from this direction cannot go forward, turn left, or turn right. But the car on the bottom, on the right, and on the top only have one direction that they can't go to. So next, we have a scenario where there are two pedestrians crossing, and I'll focus on explaining one example. So here we have one pedestrian on the left and one crossing on the top. So the cars coming from these two directions cannot go into the pedestrians, whereas the other two cars have two directions that they cannot go in, and these will all be indicated accordingly with the arrows.
Now in the third scenario here, you can see pedestrians on all 4 crosswalks walking at the same time simultaneously. And as you can see, all the cars cannot pass. And well, like this could be used like effectively on busier intersections with more people. And yeah, while this may like create like a bit of a traffic jam issue, it's important to recognize that this system it mitigates the urge for pedestrians to cross the crosswalk quickly to get to the destination. And without the urge, there'll be less jaywalkers, which then results in less jaywalker injuries and fatalities.
So while making this project, we encountered a couple of issues. One of them being that there are so many different types of pedestrians that may cross. So we need to train our AI on these specific ones, which would be just a normal walking pedestrian, a cyclist, a skateboarder or scooter, a elderly with an assistive wheelchair, jaywalker, or a baby stroller.
Yeah, so as Jack mentioned, it's extremely important for us to choose a model that's able to detect all of these different types of pedestrians. And we will have to retrain the model with a specific data set so that it can learn to recognize them. And also while we're selecting a model, it's important to consider our limitations. As we're running it on a small edge device with very limited processing power, we have to make sure that it has high enough accuracy to detect all of these different pedestrians while still fitting our limitations of the edge device.
And now the second challenge that we faced while coming up with this idea was that we need to make sure that our edge device is able to detect pedestrians, walking pedestrians, or any of the things that Jack listed above under challenging conditions such as low light or harsh weather. It needs to be able to detect the walking pedestrians instead of precipitation such as snow or rain. I mean, that might get in the way of this.
And another challenge that we face are there are many different crosswalks and intersections, so we would need to train our AI on these specific ones. When there's an uneven intersection, it would need to be able to train to just follow the crosswalks. If there's a one-way crosswalk, if there's a one-way parallel crosswalk, and if there are a four-way crosswalk.
And lastly, one of our challenges we faced is to select a device that's able to run the deep learning model. Some of the factors that we considered include the price and also the size, as well as its computing power and also its latency and response time. So we've currently looked into the NVIDIA Jetson Nano and Raspberry Pi, but we're currently leaning towards using the NVIDIA Jetson Nano as it has more computing power than the Raspberry Pi. And it's also designed for tasks like it can be used in robotics or for deep learning models and computer vision. And that's all for our presentation today. Thank you for listening.